division took out the commander. We have a job to do. We're still gonna do it. It's just...
Landing in 1 minute. Should be able to see it coming up on my right.
Hey, what's up guys? Joker here, and welcome to my performance review for Tom Clancy's The Division. The beta is going on currently right now for the weekend, so I'm going to be doing a performance review just based on the beta, so keep that in mind. The game is not out yet, so everything that I'm talking about here is obviously tentative to change, and I'm really talking about it so for people that are curious, and as well to just give my feedback so that maybe the developers could possibly see this and maybe make some changes to the game and get it working for the better. That's really the intention of making these performance reviews during the beta, just so that I can give my feedback and hopefully maybe get some changes implemented into the game that I would like to see, and get your feedback as well down in the comments below. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, usually with these videos, I do start off by going into the options first, but we're going to shake things up a little bit differently today, try a slightly different format, and see if we can get through things, I don't want to say faster, but more efficiently. So we're going to be focusing on performance right out of the gate today, and you may notice that I am playing on a single GPU. I'm playing on a single 980 Ti. I actually have SLI disabled altogether because I was having issues recording with SLI. Now, I could play just fine with SLI on, and I'm going to talk about the performance of it, but I can play just fine with SLI on as long as I'm not recording using Shadowplay. If I'm recording using Shadowplay, for whatever reason, it cuts my frame rate in half, which has never happened in any games before. Usually my frame rate dips by like maybe 2 frames at the most. It's barely noticeable. It's one of the lowest impact recording softwares that I've ever used personally. So I don't know what the issue is there. Hopefully they'll get that ironed out with NVIDIA and the drivers pretty soon, hopefully. So, but SLI though was really not too much of an issue there with the performance outside of when I was recording. So looking first at GTX 970, I wanted to focus on the test rig first, and it's a little bit more closer to the ground of what maybe some of you guys might be running out there. It's on my test system with the GTX 970 and a i5-6600K. Now at 1080p, the GTX 970 was averaging around 55 FPS, and when I jumped it up to 1440p, it did come down to around 40 FPS, and there were some areas where obviously it would go down lower than that, and some areas a bit higher when I was indoors and things like that. But when you are outdoors and you have the longer draw distances at play, you obviously are going to be contending with a little bit more performance impact on the GPU, especially if you choose to have your distance sliders turned up in the graphics options, which we'll be going over shortly, and how all of that does affect performance. Jumping over to my main rig, I did do a lot of testing on the single 980 Ti, obviously, as I couldn't record in SLI. So straight off the bat at 1080p, I was getting up around 85, 90 FPS, so that shouldn't really come as much of a surprise. 980 Ti is really overkill for 1080p, but it was still using a decent amount of video memory, like over 4 gigabytes of video memory here, even at 1080p in the Division during the beta. When I did switch that over to 1440p, I was hovering around 60 FPS most of the time, but there were areas where I definitely did dip down to like 45, 50 FPS on a single 980 Ti, and I think that's indicative of, you know, we need some more driver optimization here, we need some patches for the game, and also it's just a very demanding game to run. As far as open world, you know, like RPGs go, the detail of this game is incredible. I haven't really seen this much detail in other open world RPGs like this, and they are calling it an RPG. You know, you can contest that if you want to. You know, I'm kind of on a mixed opinion of it right now. I just play a bit more. It definitely does have some RPG elements, I will say that. So it has RPG elements for sure, but you can let me know in the comments below what you feel about it. But they're calling it an RPG, and as far as, you know, open world RPGs go, with other players being online, which it does have other players online when you go into certain areas, it's a really detailed city, like it's really super detailed. I've lived and worked in New York City, and this is pretty damn accurate, you know, to scale and everything, the way it feels in here. Just walking around the city, really love the detail in the city around Madison Square Garden, which you can see just over there off in the distance. There's actually a level where you go through inside Madison Square Garden, which was quite cool. So yeah, back to performance though. On the 980 Ti in single, I was getting around 60 FPS most of the time running around. When I did switch it over to 4K, it was all the way down to 30 FPS, so 4K was definitely a big issue with the 980 Ti. Bumping it up to SLI now. I did get some gains here in SLI, but it was not a big gain. It's definitely not the gains that I would like to see. They need to get scaling much, much better here in SLI as far as I'm concerned. The SLI scaling in this is kind of indicative of like what we've seen recently with like Assassin's Creed Syndicate and Rainbow Six Siege. It's like the cards are getting used, but there's really not a whole lot extra getting kicked on there. I would say maybe on average I'm seeing like an extra 10 FPS in some areas, where I would go like indoors it would scale a little bit better, and I wasn't seeing any limitation as far as my CPU is concerned because all of the threads are getting used, so I'm not seeing any bottlenecks there as for SLI, so really not sure what the issue is there, as the only thing it would lead me to believe is that they need to do some better driver optimization, and it is a beta, so all of that is pretty understandable, at least at this state in the game, and it does have to be hopeful for the future, because even during the, when it is running down at like 45-50 FPS, the game is still quite smooth. I still don't have any issues running around in the game and enjoying myself playing this, even on a single GPU. At 4K, obviously, you know, 30 FPS, that's a little bit low for me. I did even test it ultra-wide. This game went to ultra-wide like a champ. It had no issues scaling. Initially, the HUD was set towards the center of the screen, but thanks to the really great HUD optimization that you can do yourself, you can customize it the way you want it for the HUD. You can go ahead and take all of those HUD elements and slide them out towards the edge of the screen so that you can have them to your liking. And on ultra-wide, that's probably something you're going to want to do, unless you do want all of the HUD elements kind of centered on the screen as opposed to towards the edges where they probably should be when you do have it at that particular aspect ratio. And performance on ultra-wide was pretty darn good, I would have to say. I was getting around 40 to 45 FPS on the single 980 Ti and up around 60 running on SLI with the 980 Ti's at the 3440x4T resolution. Okay, so hopefully that gave you guys a good idea of the performance that you could expect to see here in The Division. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into the options menu, which we usually do at the beginning of these videos, but I wanted to hold it towards the end of the video to hopefully make it a little bit more relatable, I feel, to the performance as it translates into the graphics options, which we're actually going to start with here. Now, going into video actually first, I am running at 1440 here, 144 hertz, obviously, so it has the 144 hertz support. You can switch between different monitors on the fly in this, which is great for me. I love being able to switch to my 4K screen when I want to for testing, or if I just want to see what the game looks like on that screen without actually having to switch my main displays. I love seeing that in games. They do have full screen, windowed full screen, as well as windowed mode, so that's borderless full screen, this option right here, the windowed full screen, so just know that right there. That does it for just the basic video settings. In graphics settings, though, they do have a ton of options. I don't know why that says 120 FPS. It should be offset, to be honest. I do have my graphics quality set to custom, but pretty much everything in here I do have set to max, and all of the testing I was talking about as far as my performance is concerned is based on these settings right here. My shadow quality I do have set to high. Now this goes up to NVIDIA PCSS, but I did see a massive performance hit when I did put that up down to like around like 30 FPS. Really, really bad using that NVIDIA PCSS shadows, so I'm choosing not to use that, just running the shadows up at high. That's something that gave me issues in Syndicate as well, so not choosing to use it here, just something I'm not going to use. If you want to use it, if it's running good for you, that's great, but for me, it was a big performance hit, so I'm not going to be using it. Shadow resolution, this is the highest that this goes. Spot shadow count, I do have it high. Spot shadow resolution up at ultra, and contact shadows I have on all high, which is the highest that goes as well. For our post-FXAA, we do have just all SMAA options, which is really nice to see because I love SMAA. They have 1x low, medium, high, and ultra, which is kind of interesting. It's not like a multiplier, it's just 1x at low, medium, high, and ultra. For 1440, I think high is great. If you're running at 4K, obviously you could drop that down a little bit, and 1080p, maybe you want to bump it up to ultra if you do have some extra frames to play with, if you want to get some better aliasing in the game. For temporal anti-aliasing, we have a stabilization option, or super sampling. Now, if you want better anti-aliasing but a bigger performance impact, you can run super sampling. It's going to give you it gave me about a hit of about 4 to 5 FPS personally. I'm choosing to just run it on stabilization mode because I don't think I need any more than what I'm running at right here personally at 1440p. You know, that may vary based on the resolution you're playing at, so take that into account based on, you know, your perception and what you're happy with as far as anti-aliasing is concerned. Sharpening, I'm keeping that at 50% because I don't want to over sharpen. You can actually make it look, you can over sharpen, it'll look worse in my opinion. So I'm keeping that at 50% right in the middle. Should be good right there. Particle detail, this is the highest that goes, obviously all the way up at ultra. We have enable wind affected snow. We also have volumetric fog, reflection quality, local reflection quality, subsurface scattering. Now this was actually a fairly taxing option. I did notice about a 3 to 5 FPS hit having this on, so it's something that I have chose to run off personally just to get a little bit more performance, and I really didn't notice too much any noticeable visual impact on the game. I couldn't really see any difference at all, so I'm leaving that off because I'd rather have the extra frames. I really did go through all of these options and mess with them and try to find the best ones that I could, so I didn't have to turn off a lot of things and maybe just 1 or 2 things that wouldn't really affect the way that the game looked, but did give me a good boost in performance. So these are the settings I'm choosing to run with. Anisotropic, we're running that 16 times. Parallax mapping, we have ambient occlusion. Now this goes all the way up to ultra. This is another one, big performance impact. I would say almost maybe 5 to 10 FPS, choosing to run that to ultra. I'm going very high. That gives me a better performance, so that's what I'm choosing to run. Even though I don't have as many shadows as ultra, I'm running it on very high. Now they don't have it labeled as HBO Plus or anything like that, so I don't know if it's NVIDIA technology, but they don't have it labeled as such, and I have to imagine that they would if it was. So, but I'm just choosing to run very high, and that looks good to me, and it runs reasonably well, at least on my hardware. Depth of field, we're running that up at high. Object detail and extreme. Extra streaming distance. Now this is concerning, well, obviously just basically your level of detail and then your distance as well, your draw distance. So these are the settings I found to be optimal for me. This gave me a good balance of performance and draw distance without having to see too many things popping in at a draw distance, as well as giving me a good performance. If I were to put my draw distance up to 100%, there's definitely some areas like the starting area when you're at the port and you could see the city off in the distance where you're going to see a very big impact of performance on your draw distance for sure. But running around in the city where it's a lot more close-knit with the buildings around you, it's not going to be as much of an issue. Chromatic aberrations, obviously I'm turning that off. I don't like the way that looks personally. It's up to you. Lens flares, I do have that on because I do like the way those look. And vignetting effect, that is something I'm choosing to turn off because, again, it's just something I don't like. That's really just subjective. These aren't really anything for performance-wise why I have them off. It's just a visual thing that I personally don't like to look at. Coming over to our control options, we can adjust our mouse and aim sensitivity if we want. Nice to have separate sliders for both of those. I do like seeing that there. And we can also toggle on and off mouse acceleration if we want to. It was off by default. Good to see that right there. We do have full remappable key bindings with alternate remappings as well. There wasn't anything too crazy that I saw in here, but there was one issue that I came across, is that as far as switching over shoulders when you're actually playing in the game, it's automatic and it doesn't seem to happen when you need it to. There'll be a lot of times where I will be peeking corners and I just can't switch shoulders. And I went through this thing like with a fine-tooth comb, and I talked to a friend as well, and he's like, no, I don't see anything for switching shoulders. So for a third-person shooter, especially if I'm playing online, I need to be able to switch over shoulders, guys. I really hope that that's just an oversight and that's something they plan to add in before the final release comes out of this game, because I really want to be able to switch over shoulders. The automatic system that they have worked in right now is just, it's not good. It's not effective in my opinion. Maybe for like when you're on cover it can work, but when you're actually just standing up and you just want to kind of peek around a corner, like if you're strafing left and you want to look around that corner, if you want to switch shoulders, you can't do it. You can't do it manually, at least that I can see. I mean, if I'm a big stupid idiot and I'm missing something, please tell me in the comments below, because I just want to know. If I'm wrong, please tell me. If I'm wrong and you know about this, let me know in the comments, because I'd like to know the button. I just want to know. If I'm stupid and I'm an idiot and I just missed something, I'd be happy to know, just so I can find out what the button is, so I can switch shoulders and have a better time playing the game personally. So please let me know if you do know. Outside of that, we can fully customize our user interface, which I did mention earlier. So you can completely customize. They do have some options in here for like dual monitor setups as well. I tried messing with this a little bit, but I didn't see any difference. I think you have to do some customization within like the control panel as well for getting the second display setup, and I'm not exactly sure how to do that yet. So I'm leaving this dual monitor stuff for now, and I hope to be able to figure that out by the time the full release does come out for the game. Maybe I could do a dedicated video just about that. Since I do use a double monitor setup, it could be a pretty cool thing to use. In here, we can also completely move around and change all of the HUD elements, our mini-map, the chat, everything. You can change the sizing of it, and you could change where it is on the screen, and you'll see like the grayed out elements moving around on the screen as you move things around on here. So it's kind of hard to see here, but like there you see that thing right there moving around. That's the chat panel. If you wanted to put that anywhere on the screen, you can put it anywhere, vertically, horizontally. You can move it up, down, bottom. You want it in the middle of the screen for some reason, you can put it wherever you want to, with all of the different HUD elements. So this is a great HUD element, HUD customization tool here that they've put into this game. Great job, like great job. As far as like for looking at PC port quality, I mean they've done fucking amazing as far as giving us this type of customization. This is the stuff I want to see. This is like a wet dream to me. I want to see this in every shooter and game ever. Please give us this kind of customization. This is an example to live by. I can't believe I'm saying that about a Ubisoft game. We do have some more visual settings in here that we can go ahead and customize if you want to, which I'm just scrolling through here briefly. I haven't really changed anything in here personally. If you want to customize it to your liking, you can, but there's a lot more options in here. It's really, the good thing to note here is that there's a lot of customization options. As far as audio is concerned, we don't have a master slider here. We do have a proximity and group volume for our chat, and then for regular audio, we do have music, SFX, and dialogue, and then our mix type, we could just do TV speakers or home cinema. So only a couple of options there. I would have liked to have seen more options in here in the mix type as well as a master volume slider, but we didn't get any of those there. And then we do have some language options here for dialogue and subtitles and general game language as well. So just really good port quality as far as I'm concerned with customization as far as the amount of graphics options that we have, the scalability for adjusting those options and how they affect performance. So I think on a wide range of hardware, you're probably going to be able to find a FPS that's going to be acceptable for you. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a taxing game. So if you're choosing to run everything maxed up at ultra on a lower spec system, like a 2 GB card, like a 770, something like that, if you're running around like 40 FPS or 30 FPS, you're going to have to turn a few things down. That's just the reality of playing a modern game in 2016, with high fidelity in an open world like this, is you're going to have to turn some things down. And also, I just briefly want to touch that when I was running on my i5 in the test system, my CPU was completely maxed out pretty much most of the time in that system. So that was pretty tough on the i5 as well. So this is another one of those open world titles where an i7 could definitely show some benefit. But that's going to wrap up the performance review. I hope I got every bit of information that I could into this video that I wanted to. As far as the future is concerned, we just need to see some better driver optimization, I think, and get that SLI scaling a little bit better, and maybe see some further optimization tweaks as well for the other options in the game and things. But right now, I'm pretty pleased with what I see as far as just performance is concerned. It can be better, but even when I am getting those FPS, when the FPS is running down 40, 45 FPS, it's consistent there. It's not a big spike, so it's not a massive minimum. It's a pretty consistent average running across that plane, which shows me that it is maxing out my system, at least on the single GPU side of things. I did mention SLI is not scaling great. Hopefully they get that ironed out by launch. I've been Joker, and I'm going to go ahead and catch you guys next time. Ta-ra.